Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Welcome to the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, to our traditional briefing on the reforms. Success today we have August 31st, and I would like to sum up the success in reforms in the last several months. I would like to review the success with several reforms. I have selected 10 out of all the reforms which are the most successful, and to follow up the process of their implementation. The first is microfinancial stabilization news about agreement which was reached with the debtors committee with writing of more than 3 billion of reforms. The interest rate will be 7.65%, which is also lower than it was planned at the beginning, and while before this agreement there were discussions about default of Ukraine, now the politicians suggest that Ukraine not only just will go out without default, but also this will allow Ukraine to reach macro stabilization and to decrease the interest rate of the National Bank of Ukraine. Also, this decision allows to start normal planning and budgeting for 2016. The first draft budget will come soon, and the parameters reached with debtors in course of negotiation could be already included to the budget of ongoing year. This agreement is part of structural reform in Ukraine, which will allow to sanitize the public finance sphere. And the fact that Ukrainian policy here becomes more predictable and stable will allow to resume economic growth and trust from potential investors. The second reform which I would like to discuss is law enforcement bodies reform. I would like to remind you, on July 2nd, the new law on the national police was passed by the parliament. It is already implemented in Kiev, in Odessa, and in early September it will become effective for the entire territory of Ukraine. This law repeals and substitutes the previous law on militia, which was passed back in 1990s, and it changes radically the work of police. It not just changes the name of this law enforcement body, but also entirely changes the format of this body. The patrol service was launched in Kiev, Lviv, Odessa, and in some other cities now. The selection process for future policemen continues, and the competition 26 applications per one position of a policeman shows that it is very popular and that there will be best people. Also, very important aspect is the reform of the prosecutor's office. Again, in July, the new law on the prosecutor's office came to force, and this reform and this law coming in force is an important step. Now it came to force, and the prosecutor's office now has announced competition for the new selection process interposition of prosecutors. There were 2 months for applicants to submit applications during July and August, and in early September, upon finalizing of the testing stage of the competition, the stage of interviews for the applicants will come, and thus we see that the laws are in place and the new approach to the human resources working in the sphere is taken. Also, the situation is developing with the judges.
In summer, they carried out when they were working on the procedure and qualification test and the certification of judges. Those 2 documents are the basic to organize the recertification or reattestation of judges in Ukraine, which is a very important prerequisite for a high quality, let's say, renovation or let's say cleaning out the judges' corps, and after the higher qualification Council of Ukraine and the Council of Judges of Ukraine, those documents were further elaborated on, and perhaps in September they will start the process of attestation or reattestation proper in accordance with the above-mentioned documents. At least all the administrative hindrances have been lifted on the way to that. Also, if you're talking about the reforms, a very important stage was the completion of selection of candidates to fill the position of detectives in the Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine. And the first 70 detectives have been selected, and actually this procedure of selection is completed. Now they're going to undergo training. And in fact, there was a rather, and they're taking care of the thorough formation of the Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, and there are all the necessary conditions and prerequisites for this bureau to start efficient working in the fall of this year. And another condition for the normal function of this institution will be the election of a special prosecutor. This process just is now at the beginning of the road, and we're talking about the September when this procedure will start, because they have to set up a commission, and then this will take care of selecting this person. Also, the General Prosecutor's Office and the government initiate the setting up of some additional mechanism which will enable them to more efficiently combat corruption and to return the assets which were captured or grabbed through the corruptive or some other criminal ways. And they adopted working on several acts which are required for disposal of the assets which were obtained through some criminal actions, to return them. Also, they're going to change the institute of the rest of the property and the confiscation. Those additional legal tools will allow us to more efficiently combat or return the funds or the assets which were obtained through criminal ways, as it is the case the world over when they are combating the fraud, the stealth of the public budget and corruption actions. A great success. A lot of successful projects have been implemented in the sphere of openness of the authority in different spheres. This is kind of the common trend or tendency in development of Ukrainian law. First off, in the sphere of education, the Minister of Education approved the special norm, which actually necessitates to give the open access to the doctorates and the candidates or the masters theses, which have to be published before the day when they are going to be defended for a certain time after the defense of the dissertation or the thesis. It has to be achieved on the web page of this or another university for another 5 months, which will make it possible to anybody to assess the quality of this research of scientific paper or work, which will rule out, in most cases, the let's say the plagiarianship and etc. Also, the decision was passed on increasing number of hours dedicated to studying foreign languages, and starting from tomorrow the students in different schools will have additional hours and lessons in foreign languages, which is in line with a decision taken previously by the National Council reforms. Also, we should remind you about the decisions aimed at bringing the regulatory base in the sphere of education closer to the reality, I would put it this way. We are talking about the mobility of the students and the faculty or the teachers, and the profile departments actually approved, adopted a number of different acts and decisions regarding the, let's say, the students and teachers or professors' trips with the aim of increasing their skills or learning more, using the existing scholarships or exchange of students programs, which have to become more comfortable and accessible to Ukrainian students. Starting from July 1st this year, 100 centers of the free assistance given to were introduced in Ukraine, which actually are present in all the big cities of Ukraine. Those are free of charge secondary legal assistance centers, which will provide assistance to Ukrainian administrative and civil cases, in addition to the social function, in other words, providing access to the legal assistance to those persons who, because of some circumstances of their life, cannot possibly pay for those services. The function of such centers will promote in the introduction of those mechanisms of cooperation between the state and the society. Among other things, we are talking about the new trends or tendencies in subsidies, in pensions, in the energy sector. Energy efficiency is providing subsidies. This procedure requires some additional legal assistance, and through those such centers of secondary legal assistance, free legal assistance, will become those will be instrumental in providing new rules and regulations in Ukraine. Also, in the summer of this year, we had a radical change in the policy of Anti-Monopoly Committee of Ukraine regarding transparency and let's say the possibility to foresee and foretell what's going on, how they're going to work during their first session in the new composition of that committee. They approved the decision to the effect that they are going to publish within the possible limits. They're going to make publish all the decisions taken by the Anti-Monopoly Committee. In addition to that, this committee has already published the draft methodology to determine the fines and penalties to be imposed for the violation of the anti-competitive procedures, and all those measures which made the work of those committee intransparent. Before the fact that the new members of the Anti-Monopoly Committee of Ukraine decided or resolved those issues within the framework of the authorities without waiting for the legislative changes to be introduced. This shows that the state and the public bodies and agencies actually do everything in order to make their activity more transparent and foreseeable.
Besides that, Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine has passed the law which allows access to the registers of property of Ukraine. The law is already signed by the president, and in some time, all Ukrainians will be able to find out who is the final owner of the pieces of property, including cars and vehicles. On the one hand, this will allow to see who owns what. On the other hand, this will allow people to find out who are owners of the most luxury pieces of real estates and the most expensive cars. On the other hand, the absence of such a register undermines trust and raises suspicion about integrity of some officials. Also, the Data.gov.ua information portal was launched, and with time, more and more information is published on this portal. Recently, the Ministry of Infrastructure has publicized the public procurement register for this year. And this summer, the President of Ukraine has signed the approved law on petitions, and very soon the website petition.com.ua, and in line with the law, the petition has to make 25,000 signatures to be reviewed by the President of Ukraine. And one more interesting example about the pace of reforms in Ukraine. This is the law on public procurement. There were huge expectations that the parliament would introduce changes to the old law or to pass a new law on this issue. But nevertheless, during summer, we observed how new users joined the internet online system of public procurement, and now the subscribers of the system, including state companies, include even Ukrgas production company, and between 20 and 12 amount of public procurement is carried out via this system. The further implementation of this novelty is expected to start in autumn. Also, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine has introduced some changes to the resolutions of the Cabinet of Ministers, which simplified the operation of Ukrainian seaports, and this made easier the life of investors and transportation companies. The procedure for service delivery in the ports was simplified. Also, time spent for cargo processing in the seaports was reduced. And we expect that this will increase attractiveness of Ukrainian seaports for international transportation companies, and very soon the sea duties will be decreased. In July, the Ministry of Environment has passed the new regulation about production of minerals, and there's new rules substituted the old rules which were passed in 1984, and we believe that these new rules will promote production both by Ukrainian and foreign companies. Also this summer, the laws about the independence of the National Bank were passed. The responsibility for the private deposits was strengthened. The joint stock exchange market commission has introduced some novelties, and thus they stopped circulation of the securities of some bad companies, and this demonstrates how the regulators managed to improve situation even without special legislation in the sector. And this shows that reform goes on at the level of the legislation and at the level of practical activities of regulators. Big discussion this summer was around tax reform, and the tax reform will remain top priority for the government and the president this fall. Alongside with the tax reform, quite a few pieces of legislation were passed which allowed to improve situation with taxation. Thus, the cash registrators were introduced, and special law was passed, and after discussion with the SMEs representatives. Also, the electronic administration of VAT was improved. First, the software was launched in pilot mode, and now it is being launched in regular mode. In parallel with those activities, the transfer pricing was introduced and corrected, and now it is working more smoothly and balanced in the interests of taxpayers and the state. Also, the law was passed about decreasing burden, tax burden over taxpayers, and it comes to force tomorrow on September 1st, 2015. This draft law regulates written tax consultations, provision of decisions about tax consultations, tax inspections, limitations about the use of information get in course of inspection, and regulates fines for SMEs with the turnover less than 20 million hryvnia. This law comes to force tomorrow, and actually it will simplify administration of taxes in Ukraine.
And actually, it promotes everybody to use all those novelties to protect their own interests and also to follow up and monitor their efficiency with how they are implemented within the framework of the tax reform in Ukraine. Item number 10, the last but not least, the reform in the sphere of decentralization of authorities and power in Ukraine. Today, the Verkhovna Rada approved in the first reading the changes to be amendments to the constitution of Ukraine, which will enable them to implement reform in the sphere of decentralization in full measure. Over the summer, among the regions of Ukraine, they adopted the decision regarding the voluntary unification of communities, regarding the approval of the plans of the priority development, which allow first of all, to carry out the local elections already by new formed communities. On the other hand, to form the new public budget of Ukraine for the next year with the consideration of the largest size of communities in different regions of Ukraine. So this reform, which will be carried out or implemented within several years from now, it includes a number of reforms and allows us to have a good pace of the implementation so that the next budgetary year the new communities could have those advantages which are provided by such reforms. As you can see, over the 2 months of follow-up of the reforms implementation in Ukraine, we can see that the different levels, at the level of changing the legislating field in other spheres of the public authority, there are a lot of success. At the same time, a lot of discussion, criticism takes place, which is not in the way of implementing the decisions which actually create a normal, open and modern society in Ukraine and legislation to that matter. So we invite you to be involved in the discussions in the premises of Ukrainian Media Center of Reforms. We will be always happy to see you here. Thank you very much for your attention.